Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Extra Podcast, a 10-minute show for the gardener on the go. I'm your host, Joy Baird, and alongside is my wife and co-host,
Holly Baird.
This show is dedicated to the home gardener who wants to grow more food or has never grown at all and wants to learn. You can find more information about us at our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, and you can voice your opinion, comment, or question at our email address at thewisconsinvegetablegardener@hotmail.com. This show is brought to you by
DollarSeed.com. Well, all of your vegetable, herb, and flower seeds are just $1 a pack. DollarSeed.com.
And by WillowSpringSoap.com. Handmade soaps using the whole kettle process with using traditional methods. WillowSpringSoap.com. And those links can be found in the show notes for this podcast. Well, today we're going to talk all about trellising plants, the vegetables and fruits that you can grow in trellises, and the material you can make those trellises out of. Why is it important to trellis, though?
Well, trellising is important and also easy if you're trying to save space in your garden, because those viney plants can be growing up, and also a lot of those plants do better because they are trellised.
Whether you have 40 acres on a farm or 400 square feet, the air is a viable space that sometimes we take for granted and not think of using it to grow vegetables in by trellising. So we're going to talk about some of the vegetables and fruits that you can trellis, and then we'll speak about some of the materials you can make those trellises out of.
Cucumbers. Cucumbers are easy to trellis. They are, since they're naturally viney, they do really well to trellis.
As well as pumpkins. Now you might think pumpkins are too heavy to trellis. With a proper trellis that you and in getting them off the ground, you can benefit them in two ways. You can keep them from the potential of rotting, as well as when they're elevated, as they begin to grow, you can put a netting underneath them or a cloth to hold down the weight from them from breaking from the vine.
Then you can also trellis or cage tomatoes.
Tomatoes, if you do the indeterminate, they are a vine, the indeterminate type of tomatoes, and you could actually let them grow up the side of a fence, and they will grow indefinitely if the conditions are proper and warm enough.
Yeah, and then we also have winter squash. That includes butternut, buttercup, spaghetti, and those, like I said,
there's other ones.
Typically they vine out, but they do trellis nicely, and they typically don't get super heavy, they're fine on a trellis.
You could also trellis Hubbard squash, but now the Hubbard squash, much like the pumpkins, can get to a very large size, and you would have to net those as they begin to develop. But another way to get vertical if you run out of horizontal space.
Another good one is watermelon or cantaloupe, or pretty much any kind of melon.
And the watermelon can be large. The cantaloupe can mainly support itself as it's being trellised as the fruit develops on it. Another thing is
pole beans.
Is a great thing, and you don't need a very strong trellis to grow pole beans. They're a very viney plant. They produce heavily when being trellised, and that is really the ideal way of growing pole beans, hence the term the pole, that you could grow them let them grow on the ground, but they're just not going to be as successful as they would be vertically on some form of a structure.
So we have those, then we also have peas, and peas are just naturally going to want to trellis.
They'll want to grab onto whatever's nearby, whether it's a structure of some sort or another plant. And if you do not trellis them, they will grow and they'll fall over and their production will suffer because of it. Now, an item that you may not be familiar that you can trellis is zucchini. This would be green zucchini, black zucchini, yellow zucchini, crooked neck zucchini. Now, it's not as traditional trellising that you might think. As the zucchini plant develops and the stalk grows outward, the fruit will produce, and then it will continue to grow that stalk. And from where that fruit has produced back to the base or the roots, it's not going to put any more fruit on. So at that point, you could put a fence post or a post or a pole in near that plant, and you can actually let that and tie that plant onto that pole, and it will grow vertically to minimize the amount of ground space that you're going to need, because these can get relatively bushy if you allow them to grow in the traditional ground method and let them just sprawl across the ground naturally.
Then we also have, finally, is the loofah.
Loofah is the sponge that you use in the bathroom. It can produce very heavily, as we've seen from our friend, the small town gardener in Texas. He had a massive amount of loofahs on his trellises, actually broke his trellis, and they were growing at the side of the house and actually in the gutters of the house. So they can be very prolific and produce a lot of loofahs. So you want a very strong structure if you're going to plant loofahs in your garden, which is recommended because they are naturally a great sponge to use in the bathroom. So we're going to take some time now and talk about the different materials that you can make your trellises out of.
One thing you can use that you may already have there is a fence. Or if you have, if you're planting on a balcony or a patio, if you have some sort of railing, and that's just a natural trellis. In our front yard portion of the garden, we had our peas and they just were growing up the side of the fence.
Now, if you do choose to go that route and using that material as a fence being there, you do want to check with your neighbors to make sure you don't have a neighbor that's going to come by and hack them off because they feel like this is being intrusions on their property.
Or maybe they don't have a dog that might be chewing on your beans or peas.
Right. So another great item that you can start recycling or finding along the side of the road on junk day, whether it's legal in your city, state, or providence or not, you can find these things, and if you're quick about it, you can throw them in your truck, your car, your vehicle, and you can bring them home and make a beneficial use of them in your garden. One is the base of, any portion of a baby crib.
Right, those you can use the sides. Well, obviously not the mattress, but the sides or that bottom spring type deal thing that makes a good thing. Otherwise, also dog kennels. A lot of people will put dog kennels on the side of the road because maybe their dog passes away, or they get rusty, or they get a bigger dog, or what have you.
Yeah, we're speaking about the metal ones that look like a panel or a fence type thing, not the plastic domes that you would see to transport the dog or animal in. So those are two good methods. Now, if you're going to use these items, if, for example, for the dog kennel, you'd want to sanitize the metal. You want to wipe it down with vinegar. Right. Apple cider vinegar is a great method to use just to sanitize it, just to make, everything kind of as much organic as possible.
Another great idea is something that you can purchase really cheaply it's a netting. You can find this at your local garden center. Just tell them you want to trellis something items, and it's just a nylon netting. And
yep.
Usually they're, 10 feet by 5 feet.
Very high tensile nylon string.
Yeah. Works
very, very effectively.
And you can attach that with bamboo sticks, or I know those are fairly cheap at a garden center, or maybe you have some fence posts laying around. So there's many different options for that.
As well as you could actually create your own type of trellis by taking 3 logs or limbs and putting them in a teepee structure and wrapping string around it. You would want it at the top of the teepee structure, and you can see a lot of these ideals that we've incorporated in our garden by going to our Facebook,
which is Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener,
and you can look under the Trellising album, and it will show a lot of these as well. But you could take this teepee structure, throw a bolt through the top, and you can wrap string around it and use that as a trellis. And in the early stages of development of your seedlings, you could actually plant lettuce inside. So as the days get warmer, you can have a lettuce harvest with the shade of, let's say, cucumbers you've grown up the outside of it.
Right. So there's a lot of different ideas for trellising things. Sometimes if you're going to throw something away, or you see your neighbor throwing something away, think, what can I use that for in the garden? Can I grow some plants on it?
Also, another great thing is if you have baby gates.
Yeah.
If you no longer have a youngster or have any use for them, you can turn them vertically, put a fence post behind them or a bamboo stick or something of good structure, and you could zip tie those together to the stick, the baby gate to the stick, and you can use that as a trellis as well.
Right, that's always a good idea. Another thing you can use is even something like maybe if you find an old chair, one of those old kitchen chairs where there's 4 poles on there. You may not want to use the whole thing, but maybe if you want to use that portion, you can use that to trellis or to tie something or prop something up.
If you have a lot of old bicycle wheels, this was something that we recently found on the internet. You could go to your local home and garden center or your big box store, or you may have an 8 or 10 foot piece of 2x4 laying around, and take the metal portion of the bicycle wheels, remove the rubber tire, and you can tie these or nail these to the post and run them vertically and allow runner beans or pole beans to climb up this structure where you can reuse old bicycle tires as a wonderful structure. And you can be as creative with these trellises as you would like based on the situation you have to work with them in. Another great thing is
wire mesh.
You could take a old limb you cut off the tree. If it's in a fork position, you can put a fence post behind it, wrap the wire mesh around it, and that's another great reusable, recyclable way to create a trellis to grow your vegetables on. Well, that's all the time we have. I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
And this is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Extra, a 10-minute show for the gardener on the go. And this show was brought to you by
DollarSeed.com, where you can get all your organic vegetable, herb, and flower seeds for just $1 a pack. DollarSeed.com.
And by WillowSpringsSoap.com. Handmade soap using the cold kettle process while using traditional methods. WillowSpringsSoap.com. Well, we appreciate you tuning in and listening. This is the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.